No, it's just probably noticeable for the first time.
Okay, guys, we'll get going. It's my supreme pleasure to introduce the Premier. I've been driving by this pipe yard for 10 years. This is so exciting to get it in the ground, so I won't take any more of your time. Premier Jason Kenney.
Well, good morning, folks. Very excited to be out here near Oyen on this beautiful day. Thank you, Nate, for welcoming me to your beautiful constituency. We had a great night last night around Wayne, down in the Rosebud Valley, and it's great to see that you've had some rain out here in the special areas in the dry country, and to see these fields green and a great future for agriculture. But we're here this morning for an historic announcement, and I'm so excited to be here. Albertans are long overdue for a reason to celebrate. And to say that the Keystone XL project is overdue would be a big understatement. I'm very happy to be here with Richard Pryor, President of Keystone XL at TC Energy, with Gary Zier, Vice President of Mitchell's Canada, and with Roger Didichuk, Senior Vice President of the SICE Resource Group, one of the contractors that will be employed by the KXL project, and I understand he's also the local fire chief. So thank you for your service, Roger. I'd also like to acknowledge, as I just mentioned, Nate Horner, MLA for Drumheller-Stettler, Doug Jones, Mayor of Oyen, great to see you, Your Worship, Noreen Rood, Chief Administrative Officer of the Town of Oyen, and Jordan Christensen, Chair of the Special Areas Board, as well as Jason Walsmith, Chief CAO of the Municipal District of Acadia. And I'd also like to thank our Energy Minister, Sonia Savage, who couldn't be with us here today, for her tireless work in helping to get Alberta to this point. She'll be watching on live stream from Calgary, and I want to thank Sonia for being such an amazing advocate for Alberta's energy industry for so many years. So, ladies and gentlemen, after more than a decade of dogged determination and perseverance, stringent environmental review, collaboration with landowners and lawmakers, and some good old-fashioned blood, sweat, and tears, we are here at long last kicking off construction of the Alberta spread of the Keystone XL pipeline project. We're finally getting it done. As you can see, I'm standing here about 10 minutes from the town of Oyen in a TC Energy pipe yard. What you can't see in this camera is activity already occurring in this agricultural center near the Alberta-Saskatchewan border. My understanding is that hotels and motels are at near capacity around here and will stay that way until at least April of next year. And the town's population of just over 1,000 is expected to double by mid-August, when the construction workforce here is at its peak. Many of these skilled Alberta tradespeople and workers who are making Oyen their home have been out of work themselves for months. They'll now be collecting paychecks and using some of that to hard-earned pay in local restaurants, desperate for customers and revenue as they begin to reopen following the peak of the COVID pandemic. This, folks, is just one example of what will be happening in communities all along this nearly 2,000-kilometer-long route. From the Hardisty Terminal in east central Alberta to Steel City, Nebraska. From there, it will go to the U.S. Gulf Coast refineries to meet critical needs for the production and delivery of the goods and services that we North Americans use every single day. In fact, TC Energy expects the project will support 17,000 Canadian jobs and tens of thousands of jobs as well south of the border by the time it's completed in 2023. It will deliver at least 830,000 barrels per day of Western Canadian crude oil, produced under the world's most stringent environmental, human rights, and labor standards. When complete, this project will be a major part of our energy sector's continuing success and a pillar of Alberta and Canada's economic recovery post-COVID. So make no mistake, the energy industry is the lifeblood of our provincial and our national economies. Energy is Canada's single largest export sector, the single largest sector of the Canadian economy, accounting for almost a quarter of Canada's exports. and about $100 billion of value that we export out of Alberta through our energy alone. Pipelines are absolutely critical to that. And since 2005, oil and natural gas have contributed nearly $1 trillion to Canada's economy. Let me repeat that. In the last 15 years, oil and gas has contributed nearly $1 trillion to Canada's GDP, with 97% of that energy transported through safe and reliable pipelines. And by the way, I want to remind folks, if we don't transport it through pipelines like this, we're transporting it on rail, much less safely and with a much higher carbon footprint. But these economic statistics, they only tell part of the story. The oil and gas industry is directly responsible for 500,000 jobs for Canadians, helping them to put food on the tables of their families, put a roof over their heads, and clothes on their backs. And the revenue it generates supports the public services that Albertans and Canadians from coast to coast rely on every single day. Earlier this week, I announced Alberta's recovery plan to build, to diversify, and to create jobs. It is bold, it is aggressive, and it's comprehensive. And it will accelerate the diversification of Alberta's economy in industries of the future. It will also ensure that one of those industries of the future is the bedrock sector of our economy, Alberta's highly innovative, high-tech, and increasingly environmentally responsible energy sector. Our oil and gas remains foundational to our economy and to our way of life as Albertans. And as we move through the recovery, post-COVID, as we get through that, the completion of Keystone XL is going to play a central role. Every credible forecast of future world energy consumption sees oil and gas continuing to dominate the supply mix for energy for the next several decades. And average private sector forecasts predict that global oil and gas prices will recover to a WTI benchmark of at least $60 a barrel within the next 12 to 18 months, with many projections foreseeing significantly higher prices in 2023. In that environment, our energy sector is set to thrive as long as we can resolve the long-standing challenge of global market access through pipeline construction, through KXL and other projects. That's why this project is so critical and why Alberta's government stepped up to support this project with a $1.5 billion preferred equity stake to be followed next year with a $6 billion loan guarantee as backstop to support TC Energy's continued progress. Overall, the project will contribute approximately $2.5 billion to Canada's economy and will generate more than $7 million in property taxes in the first year of service alone. Over its lifetime, it's estimated the project will generate $30 billion in tax and royalty revenues for current and future generations of Albertans. Let me repeat that. $30 billion in taxes and royalties. If we want to be able to pay for our health care in the future, our infrastructure, our quality of life, we've got to get projects like this done. In the short term, it will pay more immediate dividends starting with right here around Oyen. The project will see about 2,000 construction workers hired in Alberta over the next 2 years, spurring thousands of additional jobs and increased economic activity in associated trades, retail and hospitality services along the construction route. And that route will be about 269 kilometers that will be constructed or commissioned here in the Alberta spread over the next 2-3 years. And this is part of the historic $10 billion Build Alberta program I announced as part of our recovery plan on Monday of this week, the largest ever Alberta provincial investment in infrastructure, larger than any other province, relatively speaking, that we estimate will create at least 50,000 jobs to help people get back to work following the COVID crisis. Now, while this work is important, rest assured that safety is paramount. And with the evolving COVID-19 conditions, construction crews will continue to take guidance from health authorities to ensure that our workforce and the surrounding communities are safe during KXL construction. There will be there will be political and legal bumps along the road in the next 2 or 3 years. And this today is just the beginning. But we will not rest until we see the last piece of pipeline put in place. And as I said when we announced the KXL investment about 3 months back, this project is about Alberta taking control of its destiny. And it is about Albertans sending a message to the foreign-funded special interests that have spent tens of millions of dollars on campaigns in politics and in courts to landlock our energy, that they will not succeed, that Albertans are people of determination, and we are putting the full faith and credit of the Alberta government behind this project to ensure that there is a prosperous future for our economy. We will not flag, we will not relent, we will get this job done. We will leave no stone unturned, here or south of the border, to ensure that this project is completed. KXL will strengthen continental energy security and independence, and our American friends south of the border will benefit. Will benefit because no longer will they have to rely on dictator oil from Venezuela to supply the refineries that process heavy crude along the U.S. Gulf. They can replace that with democratic oil from Canada. And no longer will they have to worry about supply shocks and everything else from Saudi Arabia, like we saw during in April during the pandemic, when Russia and OPEC took advantage of the collapse in prices to try to push North America out of energy production. We're not going to let them win that. And that's why we need North American energy independence. That's why we need this project. And that is a point we will make persuasively to Americans south of the border, to whoever Americans elect in this year's election. Shovels are finally hitting the ground on this critical project, getting thousands of Albertans and Canadians back to work right now, while ensuring the future of Alberta and the future of Canada's energy industry. And let me say that today's good news follows on top of yesterday's fantastic news, an historic decision by the Supreme Court of Canada, the highest court in the land, rejecting the last legal effort to block the Trans Mountain expansion between Edmonton and Burnaby, British Columbia, a decision that upheld the unanimous call of the Federal Court of Appeal, which pointed out that 120 of the 129 affected First Nations along the TMX route either support the project actively or are not opposed to it, demonstrating that projects like this can, should, and will be engines to create prosperity, jobs, and a brighter future for First Nations and Indigenous people across Canada and indeed across North America. So this is, in part, reconciliation. That's what's happening, in part, through our Indigenous Opportunities Corporation that seeks to advance Indigenous co-ownership and financial participation in major resource projects. So yesterday, a huge win for Alberta, getting pipelines built with TMX, and today another big win thanks to Alberta's historic investment and partnership with TC Energy. So we definitely have reason to celebrate today. And all of that's on top of the July 1st Canada Day, when we also cut taxes on job creators by another 20% to make Alberta the most attractive place in Canada, if not North America, to start a business, to hire people. And so, boy, as I said at the top, we need some good news, and we're getting some good news. And with that, I want to invite Richard Pryor up to say a few words on behalf of TC Energy. Richard?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Premier Kenney, and distinguished guests for attending today. So I'd like to start my comments by expressing my appreciation to all the frontline health workers and other essential service employees who are ensuring that people are tested, treated, and cared for with COVID-19 symptoms, and that critical businesses and supply chains that we all rely on can continue to operate. Because of the extraordinary measures that they and other Albertans have taken, our province has made encouraging progress towards safely reopening. We can't all thank you enough. At TC Energy, our role remains centered around the reliability of our pipeline and power generation network that delivers the energy needed to run much of our economy. Our control center and operations employees have continued to safely run our critical infrastructure without interruption and without incident throughout the pandemic. But this morning, we're gathered here in Oyen to celebrate the start of construction of the Keystone XL pipeline. It's been a long time coming, over 12 years in the making, but it feels good for TC Energy and the Keystone construction team to be back in Oyen. We originally worked in the town of Oyen back in 2008 and 2009 when we first constructed the first phase of the Keystone system. And in fact, TC Energy just celebrated our first decade of operating Keystone this past week, having now safely delivered more than 2 billion barrels of oil to markets in the Midwest, Cushing, and the Gulf Coast. Access to affordable, reliable, and responsibly developed energy is a cornerstone of North American economic prosperity and the high standard of living that we enjoy. Keystone XL plays a critical role in connecting the world's third largest reserve here in Western Canada with the world's largest refining market, the U.S. Gulf Coast. This project will secure a market for our Canadian oil, reducing U.S. reliance on nations that do not share our environmental stewardship and our social values. As Albertans, we cannot overstate the positive impact that construction of Keystone XL will have for the economy of our province, the financial security of Alberta families, and our standard of life. This project will create thousands of jobs, equating to millions in personal income for Alberta workers and their families, and it will also create millions in annual tax revenue for the province and the communities it traverses, such as Oyen. With construction underway, our skilled Alberta trades can take great pride in building this pipeline. It will be constructed by thousands of men and women with trade skills such as welding, heavy equipment operations, truck driving, and laboring. It will also employ workers trained in some of the latest technologies, such as advanced surveys, mechanized welding, and ultrasonic inspection, as well as safety professionals, Indigenous monitors, engineers, and project managers. All of these high-paying jobs will be critical to Alberta's economic recovery as we emerge from the coronavirus pandemic. Earlier this summer, our contractor started construction on 5 pump stations in Alberta, one of them right here in Oyen. And over the next 3 years, we will build and commission nearly 270 kilometers of pipeline across Alberta, added to a total of nearly 2,000 kilometers of new pipeline connecting to Steel City, Nebraska, much of which is engineered, planned, and managed from our offices right here in Alberta. One thing I want to assure everyone of is that as we move forward, we will be guided by our core values, ensuring we keep our workforce and our communities safe. We are working closely with medical experts, Alberta Health Services, our unions, and our contractors to implement COVID-19 best practices and protocols across the footprint of this project. So in closing, I'd like to thank and acknowledge our continued relationship with First Nations, the pipeline craft unions, and our largely Alberta-based contractors and suppliers. And of course, I would like to acknowledge our partnership with the Government of Alberta. So Premier, thank you. We know that you're our partner in delivering this important project for Albertans, creating jobs and a strong economy. I'd now like to introduce Gary Zier, who is Vice President of our pipeline construction contractor, Michaels Canada, to share a few words. Thank you.
Most people get it wrong the first go. Okay. Well, thank you, Richard, very much. A great speech, and thank you, Premier Kenney, for your support. We really appreciate that. Like most of you here, I am a lifelong Albertan, born in Edmonton, and very, very happy and very excited to be here today to announce and be part of this kickoff ceremony. It's a beautiful day in Oyen, sunny, blue skies, and it's a great way to, mark this event. So thank you, TC Energy, for trusting Michaels Canada to be a valued strategic partner and to construct the Alberta spread of the Keystone Pipeline. I can assure you it will be safely built to the highest standards by over 1,000 men and women here in Alberta over the next 3 years. They're surveyors, engineers, project managers, safety and quality professionals, laborers, welders, teamsters, and operators, and many more hardworking people who are going to be spending time away from their families and their homes while completing this project. And they're going to benefit greatly from these well-paying jobs as well. The local community will as well. I'd like to thank the town of Oyen. They've been just fantastic since we got here 3 weeks ago and given us a warm welcome to the Michaels team. I can't say, it's just so heartwarming when they just open up the community and then, support us, and, it's good to have that positive vibe going on. So, I don't know, not much else to say, but other than that, I'd like to introduce Roger Didichuk, Senior Vice President of Site Resource Group. Roger's been working with our guys and is value subcontractor and brings a lot of local knowledge and expertise from the area here. So.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Alberta government, and thanks, TC, for this opportunity today. Some of my stuff has already been said, so my list is getting a little bit shorter now. So, Site Resource Group is a local contractor here at the NB of Acadia Valley for over 35 years. We started as a family business and have grown into a North American contractor, and doing what we always have, kept our rural base. Part of our community's commitment is to partner with businesses and communities where we work. Today's event clearly demonstrates Site, TC Energy, and the Government of Alberta's commitment to supporting local and Indigenous businesses and communities, while building infrastructure that is critical to our province and country. We've been very fortunate to be involved in the Keystone XL project. We were involved back in 2010, with this pipe yard here being one of the projects which we constructed. This land was built up on my father-in-law's land back then, and he knew then how important this project was to our community. And we've been eagerly waiting for the kickoff ever since. We are very excited to work with both TC and Michaels Canada on this project. As local businesses, we'd like to thank the Alberta government and TC Energy for moving forward with this important project. Our local economy has been impacted with the current economic crisis in the province. To have Keystone XL in full construction in 2020 and continue into 2021 will boost our local economy and contracting community. In addition, it will allow us contractors to collaborate together to provide a number of services to try to keep the work local. TC Energies and Michael Canada have followed through their long-standing commitment to use local contractors and suppliers. We're seeing the benefits of that as our local workforce is gainfully employed in another months to come. We also like to thank our Aboriginal partners, Ermineskin Cree Nation. We've been working with their community for a number of projects across Alberta over the last number of months. We are very happy to work with them in our own community on Keystone XL. Keystone XL not only benefits the province's economic well-being, it also benefits our municipality and special areas. Construction of the project will create a surge for local businesses such as restaurants, hardware stores, local accommodations, service stations, etc. This boost of the economy feeds our local businesses as residents and visitors to the area shop local. We also want to thank TC Energy for their efforts to donating to our local community. Just recently, they made a very generous donation to the Warren Pierce School in Acadia Valley, where they're going to be using that money to buy some iPads for their students. This will allow the students to learn with up-to-date technology. Those that live in small communities often wear different hats. I'm also the volunteer fire chief for the MD of Acadia Valley. On the protective services side, safety is always our first concern. And right now that includes COVID-19. We want to ensure everybody that TC Energy, Michaels Canada, Royal Camps, and Site Resource Group have all worked together to provide a comprehensive safety plan that will ensure the safety of the community and all the workers. It's everybody's responsibility in this time to take all these new guidelines and procedures seriously, and we all expect everyone to go home safe. I'm very proud to be part of this project. I'm looking forward to working with this new team over the next number of months. I look forward to having this new pipeline family in our community. Thanks very much.
push *1 to join the queue. As well, limit yourself to one question. And with that, operator, please put through the first caller.
First is Emma Graney with the Globe and Mail. Go ahead, Emma.
Yeah, g'day, Premier. Harrison, I know you said one question, but I'm going to be cheeky and do two because that's how I roll, mate. Tony, you said then that Alberta will leave no stone unturned when it comes to getting the pipeline built. I'm just curious what that looks like on the ground in the US, particularly with court cases that are obviously ongoing. And just briefly as well, you keep listing the $1.5 billion investment in Keystone XL as a COVID measure, yet these negotiations with TC were going months before COVID or how it was even a thing. So I'm just curious as to why you continue doing that. Thanks.
Thanks, Emma. So first of all, when I say no stone unturned, I mean that we will use every tool at our disposal to get this project done. And that involves, wherever we can be helpful, supporting TC Energy in responding to efforts to block the project in U.S. courts, working with the federal government to communicate the importance of this to North American energy independence, to decision makers in Washington, to candidates for office, and to people who are elected after November. It involves us stepping up our efforts to inform our American friends in the general public, opinion leaders, and political decision makers about how U.S. jobs and the economy and national security will all benefit from the completion of the Keystone XL project. One of the practical ways in which we are doing that is by stepping up our presence in the United States with the recent appointment of former Parliamentary Finance Committee Chair James Rajat to be Alberta's senior representative at our Washington, D.C. office. And next week we'll be making the formal announcement opening our office in Houston, Texas, where we will now for the first time have a presence in what is really the global capital of oil and gas companies. We're also looking at further expanding our network of permanent offices in the United States and other key markets to engage more decision makers and more business leaders. But I guess the most important part of this is the investment itself, because if we had not stepped up, we would not have the pipe in the yard here. The work would not be happening. It required the government to step up and de-risk this project with this prudent investment. $1.5 billion preferred equity position, which the province will reflect as a capital investment, as an asset on our balance sheet. It is not an operating expenditure. It is an investment in an asset. So we're supporting this obviously on the financial side. We're supporting it politically. We're supporting it through advocacy and education, and wherever we can be helpful, we'll support it legally as well. In terms of accounting for this as part of our economic recovery plan, as we outlined on Monday, Alberta so far this year is committed to at least a $10 billion capital budget. This includes the $6.9 billion that we committed to in Budget 2021, in addition to the $1.5 billion pipeline build happening here, and an additional $500 million for municipalities, an additional $600 million in provincial strategic projects like the Highway 329 announced yesterday, the Lethbridge Agricultural Exhibition, and many more that we'll be announcing in the next couple of weeks. It also involves $150 million for municipal water and wastewater, as well as tie-ins to First Nations to improve their water quality, $50 million in STIP to support rural municipalities in upgrading provincial infrastructure, and it also involves, $170 million for a reboot of the Alberta Seniors Living Initiative. More details to follow shortly. We anticipate there will be additional capital commitments by Alberta's government this year. So I guess I would say this, that we're looking at most of that spending, that $10 billion, including this 1.5, will be happening post-COVID. So you're right. Yeah, we did plan for this before, and we were in an economic trough for the last 5 years. So one of the reasons we maintained very high levels of capital spending was to try to get people back to work in that context. Then we got whacked by COVID, the oil price crash, the global economic recession, and then we've increased the infrastructure spending commitment by 40%. So I see this as all part of one big package to do what we can to get people back to work.
Thanks, Premier. Operator, can you please put through the next call?
Next is Tara Weber with BNN. Go ahead, Tara.
Hello, Premier. I'm just wondering, on the back of Emma's comment, we know that U.S. presidential hopeful Joe Biden has promised to cancel the permit if he's elected. How do you hope to navigate that, and how concerned are you?
Well, we will be reaching out, as we already have. We'll reach out to members of his party, many of whom support the project, to labor unions who are close connections to his party and to his campaign. We would like to thank the Building Trades Union, the AFL-CIO, LIUNA, the steelworkers and others for their strong support for this project. And I know that they will be partners with us in communicating to Mr. Biden's campaign, and should he be elected, his transition team, the importance of this project to create jobs. And it's also underscore the importance for North American energy independence and American national security. So part of what we are doing here with this project is to create facts on the ground. And if there is a change of administration next January, there will have been very substantial progress on this project in 3 U.S. states, across the Canada-U.S. border, as well as north of the border. We also look forward to the support of the Government of Canada in reminding all of our friends in the United States that the Canada-U.S. trade relationship is the most important bilateral trade relationship in the history of the United States, and that Canada's largest export to the United States is oil, passing through pipelines, and that it would be a terrible blow to this important strategic friendship, this trading relationship, and this alliance for any U.S. administration to cancel a project in which billions of dollars have already been invested. So I think we have a very strong case to make. Polls continue to reflect that a majority of Americans support the project, and so we'll continue to make that case. But there's no doubt that there will be bumps along the road in the months to come. But let me just put it this way. We were not prepared to sit here passively having other people in other countries or the foreign-funded campaign of special interests seeking to landlock our energy. We weren't going to sit there passively and let them impose things on us. We are taking the initiative. This is about leadership. And you can't do that without taking risks. So we have taken a conscious risk to get construction started, to create facts on the ground, and we look forward to working with the many key leaders in the United States who support that.
Thank you. Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Next is Robert Tuttle with Bloomberg News. Go ahead, Robert.
Thank you. Just answered my question. I have no further. Thank you.
That was easy.
All right. Next is Tony Seskus with CBC. Go ahead, Tony.
Yes. Hi, Premier. I'm wondering if I could get your thoughts on news that Irving Oil is I guess, purchased some oil from Cenovus and is shipping that oil through the Panama Canal. Any thoughts on that?
On the one hand, it makes me happy that we were finally going to be able to supply a Canadian refinery on the East Coast with Alberta oil, but it just underscores how crazy this whole situation is, because this same company on the stage with us here, TC Energy, was trying to build the Energy East project that would have taken our oil through a network of existing pipelines, extended them out to the St. John port and refinery, so that we could have transported it out there much more safely and at a much lower environmental footprint than doing it through shipments through the Panama Canal. This is how crazy it is. We just celebrated Canada Day. We just celebrated the unity of this country. And it just defies belief that we can't unite the country right now, apparently, with infrastructure to share Western energy with Eastern production and markets. I want to thank Irving Oil. I've been out there. I visited the refinery, and My friend, New Brunswick Premier Blaine Higgs, was an executive at Irving Oil for 30 years. He understands the industry extremely well. I want to thank Irving for having made a deliberate decision to increase its use of Canadian crude and thereby reduce, at least somewhat, its imports of OPEC crude. And I think that's an important expression of confidence in Canada. I want to thank Irving and the government of New Brunswick for having stood alongside us in opposition to what the Saudis were doing in April by dumping additional supply on global markets in the face of a catastrophic collapse in prices. So I think this is an important expression of national unity. It will benefit Canadians in both the East and the West, but it underscores why we need that national pipeline infrastructure. We have not given up on that. I also want to thank my premiers, my premier colleagues from coast to coast, who have expressed support for national energy and resource corridors, including oil and gas pipelines. We obviously continue to have a difference of opinion with Quebec on that, and we would just renew the call for the federal government to indicate its willingness to consider a renewed proposal for a west-east pipeline to achieve the dream of Canadian energy independence, create jobs here, and reduce foreign oil imports to Eastern Canada.
Thank you. We have time for about 2 or 3 more calls. Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Next is Safe Kaiser with 660 News. Go ahead, Safe.
Morning, Premier. 2 questions for you. Firstly, are there any specific roadblocks you expect in the future of KXL? What are you planning to do about them? And secondly, you invoked the Blackfoot and working with them as well as other First Nations and Indigenous people in your reaction to TMX yesterday. You spoke not only of reconciliation but reconciliation, yet when those same First Nations called on you to fire your speechwriter when he called residential schools a bogus genocide story, you ignored them. What kind of message do you feel that sends?
No, I never ignore our First Nations. I always listen respectfully, and I have a very good relationship with Chief Greer of the Piikani, Chief Fox of the Blood, the Kainai, as well as Chief Crowfoot of the Siksika, and I'm very pleased to work with all of them and their communities on advancing economic opportunity. We signed an historic protocol agreement with those Blackfoot nations about a year ago down at Blackfoot Crossing. Been working on repatriating some of the regalia of Chief Crowfoot back to Blackfoot Crossing, and many other important projects. I look forward to continuing to do that. As I said, I speak for the government of Alberta, and I have very clearly, as recently as 2 weeks ago, affirmed the racist and unjust nature of the Indigenous residential school system. In terms of what we're going to do on KXL, let me say again that we are expanding our presence in the United States. We've appointed a senior representative in Washington, former Parliamentary Finance Committee Chair James Rajat, and we will be opening an office in Houston to be led by a prominent and accomplished Albertan in the days to come. To expand our message, we are working closely with the Government of Canada to indicate to American political leaders on both sides of the partisan aisle and at both the federal and state levels that this project, KXL, will not only create thousands of jobs in the U.S., billions of dollars of revenue, but will also strengthen their energy independence and their national security. So we are closely monitoring developments in U.S. courts. There are multiple complex challenges at different stages. Where possible and where we think it's helpful, we will file amicus curiae briefs to support TC Energy. And my trip down to Washington last February was in part in anticipation of this project of this day, where I met with the U.S. Secretary of Energy, Secretary of the Interior, other senior members of the administration, several U.S. governors, senators, and congressmen and women to underscore the importance of this project. And as soon as we can get back on the road post-COVID, I'll be back down there in Washington. I also want to thank, by the way, Governor Steve Bullock from Montana, just south of us, a Democrat, who was running for president earlier this year, for his strong support for this project. Governor Bullock and his administration were very helpful in facilitating the initial steps of construction on the Montana spread in the last couple of months within the context of COVID public health measures. So we have a lot of really constructive relationships on both sides of the aisle in the United States, and we'll continue to develop those.
All right. Thank you. Operator, can you please put through the next question?
Next is Charlotte Dumoulin with Radio Canada. Go ahead, Charlotte.
Bonjour, M. Kenney. Concernant les obstacles peut-être à venir aux États-Unis, on sait que le candidat Joe Biden est opposé au projet. Quelles sont vos démarches pour justement que le projet avance et qu'il n'y ait pas de blocage finalement?
Oui. L'Alberta va appuyer évidemment les efforts de TC Energy dans les cours américains. On va déposer les dossiers de l'Alberta pour défendre l'oléoduc dans les cours américains. Et on va travailler avec le gouvernement du Canada pour renforcer auprès des décideurs aux États-Unis, républicains et démocrates, y compris la campagne de M. Biden, l'importance de ce projet pour la création d'emplois aux États-Unis, pour l'indépendance énergétique en Amérique du Nord et pour la sécurité nationale des États-Unis. Parce que depuis les décennies, les Américains, ils ont défendu la sécurité de Golfe Perse, de Moyen-Orient pour renforcer leur accès à pétrole de l'OPEC. Évidemment, c'est une amélioration énorme d'avoir l'accès stable à l'énergie canadienne, démocratique. Et c'est la raison pour laquelle on va travailler. C'est également la raison pour laquelle nous avons nommé comme notre représentant principal aux États-Unis James Rajat, l'ancien président du comité des finances du Parlement. On va ouvrir la semaine prochaine un bureau également à Houston, au Texas, pour élargir notre présence aux États-Unis. Et on va mettre accent avec le gouvernement du Canada de l'importance de cette relation bilatérale de commerce avec les États-Unis et que ça va nuire à la relation bilatérale si une administration à l'avenir annule ce projet dont les Canadiens ont investi milliards de dollars pour créer milliers d'emplois aux États-Unis. And maybe I'll just come back in English. I made a point in French I wanted to add, which is it's not just about North American energy independence, but also American national security. Our American friends have spent trillions of dollars in the past several decades defending security in the Persian Gulf region to have access to OPEC oil to fuel their economy. But in recent years, we achieved the dream of North American energy independence with North America becoming a net exporter of oil. That was jeopardized this spring with the Saudi surge of supply along with the Russians. And so Keystone XL getting over 800,000 barrels a day of democratic Canadian reliable energy to the U.S. refineries says that they will never again have to rely on OPEC. So this is not just an economic question, it's not just a jobs issue, it is a national security issue, which is why we're pleased to have support from leaders on both sides of the partisan aisle in the United States.
Right. Thanks very much, folks. That's all we have time for today.
Thank you. You don't hear a lot of French out here in Oyen, do you, Mayor? Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys. You want me to walk down there? Okay. Nancy.